Good afternoon, everyone. It's April 16th, 2019. I'm Eric. Here's a place I haven't been for a while, paulcraigroberts.org. For those of you who do not know who he is a former, I think he was an advisor to Reagan or something like that. But he's a decent man, and he writes some good stuff, so I'm going to talk about a couple of the things he has written. I'm going to hit the two headlines here. First, the fake charges against Julian Assange proves that the U.S. government has no integrity. And of course, and a lot of things prove that the U.S. government has no integrity, such as, the shit tons of broken treaties and laws broken, international laws, as well as constitutional laws. I mean, I can go on and on and on how we can prove the government has no integrity. That's easy. But it's true. Those are fake charges. If Julian Assange is criminalized and incarcerated for revealing the truth about what our rulers are doing, have done, then you might as well deliver yourself behind those walls. You might as well volunteer for a prison cell yourself, because you'll no longer have any kind of freedom. And man, it's coming quick. All these draconian, restrictive laws, regulations, you name it, they're not only coming, they've been here. I've done numerous videos about some of the laws that have been written regarding that really do prove that we are not a free people, that we are owned by a corporate entity known as the United States government. So there's that. And I had to do something about the lighting, and that light was really penetrating my eyes. Okay, so Russian military experts say time for Russia to prepare for war. I hate to break the fucking news to them. I don't know where these guys have been, but Russia's been preparing for war, and that's exactly why they developed the latest two super weapons. The one that can trigger a massive tsunami, and the other that's a hypersonic multi-warhead missile. So they've been preparing for war for a while now. I think it's more like it's time for Russia to begin running operations. And according to Dave Hodges and a few others, that's exactly what's about to happen here in the United States in the not too distant future, that Russia, China, among others, the United Nations, will be operating inside of our borders. But this is the article that I want to cover in full from Dr. Roberts here. April 15th. And I know I'm a day late, dollar short, but what can I say? If I would have seen it yesterday, I would have done it yesterday. And besides, April 15th is not the only day we're slaves. We're slaves every fucking day. And by the way, Dr. Roberts here is about the most non-racial person you can meat. I mean, he's not hung up on identity politics. Before I even get into this, because a lot of it, he has a lot to say about some of the things going on here that I agree with more or less. The Jews' path to profitable victimhood was the Holocaust. For blacks, the path is slavery. We hear endlessly about slavery. Slavery is always the fault of white people, especially the Founding Fathers, the Confederacy, and Robert E. Lee. Slavery is never the fault of black Africans who engaged in slave wars against one another. Slaves were a status symbol. When slave wars produced more slaves than victors could afford to maintain, the Africans began selling each other to the Arabs. Yes, I said Arabs, okay? I'm not politically correct. Fuck that. When the Europeans discovered the New World and needed a workforce for the rice and sugar and later cotton plantations, they purchased Africans from the Black Kingdom of Dahomey. Dahomey. You know what I'm saying? Dahomey. Before propaganda and the teaching of hatred of white people took over from education in American universities, the origin of the slave was well known. Books such as Carl Polanyi's Dahomey, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but whatever, and The Slave Trade describe the facts of the African tribal slave wars. One would think that Polanyi's book would be a textbook in black studies courses, since the purpose of black studies is to demonize white people. Today, Polanyi's book is regarded as, guess what, racist. And it is out of print. Amazon lists 6 used copies available at prices ranging from $121.37 to $208.23. Clearly, blacks are never going to learn anything factual from black studies. Every race has been held in slavery. Every fucking race. And I don't understand the complex that seems to affect black people more than any other race that's been a slave in our history. They seem to be very, very insecure as a result of their enslavement. I mean, don't get it twisted. We're all still slaves, but it's a kind of a different type of management system. And that's what all these different governments really have been, is nothing more than systems of management. Democracy is no exception to that either. Constitutional republic. You need to keep in mind that many brutal regimes operate under the flag of republic. Just saying. So, our nation's, the fact that we have a constitution or a constitutional republic does not make us any more special than any other banana republic. And that's exactly what we are. Okay. Where did I leave off here? Okay, yeah, right. Every race has been held in slavery. Everyone. the Romans conquered, and every barbarian tribe that crossed the Roman lines could end up as slaves. Arabs raided all over Europe for white slaves. A good text for black studies would be New York University's Press 2007 book, White Cargo: The Forgotten History of Britain's White Slaves in America by Don Jordan and Michael Walsh. The authors are not talking about the indentured servants, a form of slavery for a contracted period of usually 5 to 7 years. From the story of the Irish race by Sumas McManus, you could learn that tens of thousands of Irish were enslaved and shipped to the West Indies to work and die on the sugar plantations. But people, essentially blacks, don't want to know this. They cling to their brainwashing and unique victim status, like the Jews who won't let anyone question the Holocaust. And by the way, if you question the Holocaust, you become an anti-Semite instantly. You hear that? Fucking assholes. People are fucking assholes. While blacks build their victim status, the real slave or slavery today goes unnoticed. Let's begin by understanding what a slave is. A slave is a person who does not own the products of his or her own labor. That is, a slave is a person who is taxed on his or her work. Sound familiar? A person who does not own the product of his own work is exploited. In 19th century America, the tax rate on slaves had been estimated to be about 56%, or has been. The other half of the slave's work product was necessary to maintain the slave and the owner's investment in the slave. In the feudal era, the tax rate on serfs was limited to about 30%. The technology in the feudal era was less than in the 19th century, and the lower productivity of labor in the feudal era meant that the serfs could not reproduce if they were taxed more than a third of their work product. So, you are a slave. Make no mistake about it. You're just a slave that has to provide your own housing, your own energy, your own transportation, your own health care, education. I mean, yes, you go to public schools, but beyond that, you're either indebted to the tunes of tens of thousands of dollars, or you have to work a couple jobs to pay the tuition. Before the Reagan marginal tax reduction, middle-class Americans were taxed at or above the rate of medieval serfs, and the rich, with a 50% marginal income tax rate and a 70% tax rate on investment income, were taxed at higher rates than 19th century slaves on southern plantation. Do you hear that? So, you are being taxed more than the serfs and slaves of the 19th century. And, of course, the invention of the income tax turned us all into government-owned slaves. And man, I've gone over the legislation in pretty fine detail. The who, the whens, the wheres, all of it. It's all out there if you want to know about it. And the truth of the matter is, our nation turned into a corporation. It's no longer a constitutional republic. It's no longer being managed as such. It's being managed as a corporation. And according to corporate law, the corporation must do everything possible to maximize the profits of the shareholders. So, since our government is a corporation, it must have shareholders. Must. Just think about that for a minute. And if they have shareholders, by law, they have to do everything possible to maximize the profits of those shareholders. You want to know why things are the way they are, and that's a good part of it. Many people confuse slavery with a lack of mobility. This is a mistake. Some 19th century slaves had mobility in America. Those with skills were leased to businesses in towns and cities. Deductions from the slave's pay was sent to the slave's owner, just as employers today deduct from the pay of employees and send the payroll tax to Washington. It's exactly the same. Bloomberg Business Week recently reported on a new form of slavery that has risen in America. Students sell part of their future income to investors in exchange for their educational expenses. The article tells the story of a 23-year-old woman who sold a piece of her future earning power for 8.5 years in an income-sharing contract. When I was educated, tuition for in-state students at state universities was nominal. Today, students have to cover the cost by selling themselves into partial slavery. And that's not even including the slavery we're already under. The work product of the woman who is the example in the Bloomberg Business Week article is partly owned by private investors and partly owned by state and federal governments. It is possible that her share of work product is less than that of a 19th century slave. This form of slavery is acceptable to blacks and whites alike. What if 19th century plantations had treated slaves as a free workforce earning a salary that was taxed at 50%? How would this be any different from the slavery we all suffer today? Again, this comes from an individual who's a doctor, who's been in a decent position inside the government. And even he understands the extent of our enslavement. So, yeah. Next time you see a cop, thank him for your enslavement. Next time you see a veteran, you make sure you give him that thumbs up and praise him for his service to our country. You live with this delusion. And that's exactly what it is. Anyway, I like Mr. Roberts. I like what his interviews and his articles, so I thought I'd share this with you. Hope you all have a good day. And by the way, if you like my videos, please do give me a thumbs up, maybe a share, PayPal link in the description box below, and a Discord link as well. If you're not subscribed to my BitChute channel, please do so, because I literally am the most censored person on YouTube. Till next time, kill the state, live free.